What other tools are you guys using in your business that has changed the game for you?
If they're in a world of hurt, they've got this foreclosure coming up. There's a whole bunch of other problems associated with the property. They've got some notices from the county saying they've got some things that have to be fixed. Their other choices are pathetic.
When you first started asking that question, I immediately wanted to talk about TV, which obviously probably isn't the answer that you were looking for with that. But man, that was the thing. Marketing's the start of your business. And if you can get that right, it makes everything else easier. And so that was the thing that actually gave me the potential to grow a bigger business. And that's what allowed these other tools to start mattering to me.
Welcome to the Inner Circle Mastermind podcast, where we gather 3 to 4 experienced real estate investors to talk about what's working and what's not working. On this one, we have Bill, who's 76 years old, that's implementing AI. He shares with us all the tools that he's using in his business. Wyatt's doing the same thing, and he's actually doing title searches before he even contracts the property. We're going to share what tools and systems are working in our businesses. We're even going to talk about the top lessons we've learned over the last decades in business that we would tell ourselves getting started. This is a good one, so go check it out. For those that are listening in live, welcome. For those of you listening replay on YouTube, thanks for joining us. We started this panel a couple months ago, and it's been unbelievable. Just the value that we've been giving to each other and that we've been giving to the community has been outstanding. The feedback has been amazing. So thanks for tuning in. We've got a couple of experienced investors. Again, Tim and Wyatt are here joining us. Guys, how you doing? You guys are ready to rock and roll?
Oh, yes.
All right, good stuff. So what we do is to start off with, we do a quick intro. So just really quickly, where you're from, a little bit of background about yourself and what you specialize in, and then we'll start getting into some round robin questions. So Wyatt, you want to kick us off, buddy?
Yeah, you bet. Wyatt Johnson. I'm with Billings Home Buyers up here in Billings, Montana, and started off as an electrician, 7 years ago, and bought my first flip, lived in it, fixed it up, started doing more of those, quit my job as an electrician and got into flipping and wholesaling full time. Been doing that for almost 4 years now, and it's really grown. We're doing about 40 flips a year now. We'll probably do 50 or more this year. And yeah, just continuing strong with that.
Awesome, good stuff. When I met you, I think just a couple of years ago, you were doing about 1 or 2 deals a year. So you've doubled, almost tripled your volume. So that's awesome, man. Love to dive into that a little bit more as we get into the conversation.
That's great.
All right, Tim, what about you, bud? Looks like you've been in the industry for just a little bit.
A little while. I've been a realtor for only 46 years. The next thing I ask people not to hold against me, in California, I've been an attorney since 1973. I would describe myself as a recovering attorney, trying to give up, make up for that mistake. I'm also a general contractor, so I could be the contractor on my fix and flips. I teach continuing education classes and I teach negotiating. My primary forte is to teach investors and realtors how to negotiate. Recently, I've been using AI to help me negotiate quite a bit. It's been a great item. I do fix and flip. I'm doing a decent amount of buying and holding. And the thing I'm transitioning into is, instead of being a landlord, I'm being a lien lord. I would rather own the note. And when the hot water heater breaks, they don't call the lender. I'm getting more of that because I like the passive income aspect of it.
Awesome. Lien Lord. I've never heard of that before. That's amazing. So something you mentioned there that we'll jump into. Let's start with that. Let's start with AI. That's something that obviously for the last 2 or 3 years has been kind of the big buzz. And I feel like in the last 30 days, it's even turned a little bit more. I don't know if you guys are using Claude, but Claude has opened up a feature called Cowork, which will basically deep dive and kind of be an agent for you and, help you as an assistant. And then they also have a couple other features that opened up in the last 30 days. I can't remember what the last one is called that just opened up a few days ago. So talk about that, Tim, and AI. What exactly are you using AI for? And how do you feel like it's either helped make what you're doing quicker and easier, or helped you to, I guess, just navigate anything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, one of the things I like to do with it is to use it to negotiate better. I teach people to collaboratively negotiate. A lot of people do confrontational negotiation. My gain is your pain. What I've found is if you all work together, it's like a mutual puzzle solving, and you can do a lot better. In order to do that, you have to start off on the right foot. So what I do is use my super prompt, where I've got Claude is also my favorite. Cowork here, exactly right, is wonderful. You can tell it to operate the other apps And so, you tell Claude, what do you want it to do? It goes out and does it. But better than me yelling at my assistant to say, go get those things docu-signed. It'll take care of it. So that's the primary thing. If anybody on your podcast wants a copy of my super prompt, just send an email to me, tim@timburrell.com. Put super prompt in the subject. It'll send it to you and you can use it. For example, Tony, your background being playing football, moving from Wichita to San Diego, things of this nature. When I start a negotiation with you, I want to find some common ground. I want to find something where we can have certain interests in common. And that way we can be much more inclined to work collaboratively as opposed to confrontational. And what you're looking for, I'm blanking on his name,
The guy that wrote the book?
The guy who wrote well, you see my book in the background, AI Negotiator, but it is Persuasion. Cialdini talks about people will more likely to say yes to people that they like. They like people where they have something in common, where the people give them some form of legitimate compliments and where they'll work together with them. So if you start off on that particular front, then your negotiations are going to go a whole lot better. And our success in real estate, you make your money when you buy the property. You have to buy it right and you have to get a good deal. You get yourself into a bad deal, you can do things to work your way out of it and to do, make up for it. But your whole trick in my book is to negotiate better, make a better deal, get things to work. Simple example. I just sold a property in a condo complex out here. The last sale, I represented the seller. The last sale was for $280,000. I sold this one for $312,000. The buyer was particularly happy because he had other interests other than the price. We satisfied all those other interests, and the price wasn't the most important thing, so he gave us our price. That's what I'm talking about in terms of collaborative negotiation. That you give somebody else what they want, what's more emotionally satisfying to them, and then you take something of equal value, which in my situation was the price.
Well, something interesting that came up as you were talking, first of all, the fact that you mentioned that I played football and I moved from Wichita to San Diego made me know that you knew about me and that you did your homework about me, right? Would you say that when you go into negotiations, like let's say someone even just comes in off the street, wants to sell us their house, maybe using AI to go find out more information about them so that we can connect with them. So if I know that they moved from Wichita to San Diego or San Diego to Wichita, whatever it is, and somehow bring that up in conversation, and all of a sudden that becomes a talking point, and maybe there's something that I have in common with them. Is that kind of what you're referring to about using it for negotiation? Or is it more when you're negotiating, kind of talking to Claude while you're negotiating to give you ideas on how to negotiate that deal?
There are a number of apps, Sybil and a couple of other apps that you can run while you're negotiating, and it will sense sentiment and give you red flags and things of that nature. I don't use them. But just in my book, I mentioned that they're out there. I'm not supposed to decide for you what you ought to know. I'll just give you all the information. You decide whether you want to use it or not. I don't use them because they're distracting. I'm much better at looking at the people, reading their face, and figuring out what's in common. You're exactly right in terms of somebody comes in off the street. For example, I ran the super prompt on you 3 minutes before we went on. And so it doesn't take much time for me to get a whole series of things of go ahead and talk. And you're exactly right. If you and I start off about, oh, well, I've got relatives in San Diego. Oh, I'm a fifth generation California, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We start off with something in common. That is, rapport is the tube through which truth passes. If you can get a rapport with somebody else, they're not going to give you all kinds of games and all kinds of funny things. And realistically, deals are made much more on emotion than on facts and figures. If you can hit somebody's emotion, for example, we all deal, my specialty is to chase people who've had notices of defaults filed, and they're looking at major problems. Well, those emotional problems, if I can solve those problems, I can get what I need, which is a good price. And so I get them out of the things that are really, keeping them awake at night. And then in return for that, they don't have to hold out for the top dollar. Well, you can also do, there's a number of particularly good apps where you can find out not only about the person. Claude is excellent. I greatly prefer it over ChatGPT. Claude gives you a lot more detailed information, and it also writes better. I'm very fond of Manus for getting different projects together. For example, when I do PowerPoint, I just let it write the PowerPoint, and it does things a whole lot better than those things. If you want to create websites, for example, I'm just in the process of creating websites I'm getting tired of trying for me to contact the people who are in trouble. because they want to ignore me. They get millions of letters. They get everybody knocking on the door. So I finally, I don't know, after all this time, I finally realized if I put up a system where I have a source of information that they can find, and they on their own can decide that I'm the expert, that I'm the person who's going to help them, that I'm the one who's going to give them an abundance of choices, much better. Well, Lovable is without an E, Lovable, fabulous thing. You can just get in. First, you go into Claude, you tell it, give me the prompts, write the prompts that I'm going to use for Lovable, because Lovable will charge you for writing the prompts. You write the prompts in there, go into Lovable, spit the thing in there, and tell it to make your website. Then you go out and you operate the website for a little while, and there's some things wrong with it. Well, instead of hiring an expensive person, you just go in and talk to it and say, hey, this is wrong, fix it. And it'll go back in and fix it. And then you keep trying it of several iterations. Once you get it right, you make it go live, and there you go. So yeah, AI has a tremendous amount of resources that instead of hiring all kinds of tech-savvy propeller heads, you can go ahead and put all this stuff together. It does take a little while to learn, but once you've got it down, you can jump into all kinds of opportunities very quickly.
Awesome. Love it. How do you spell Sybil, by the way? Is it Cybil?
No, Sybill.
Sybill. Cool. I'll have to check that out. Awesome. Good stuff. What about you, Wyatt? How are you using AI in your business?
Yeah. In the beginning, I was kind of skeptical. I wasn't using Chat GPT as much as other investors were, but Claude Cowork changed everything for us. And a guy on my team, Randall, has a lot of interest in it naturally. And so he actually built us out a title search agent in Claude. And so now we're getting full title searches back in 20 seconds, just inputting the address of the property. And the ones that we've compared with the title company and our Claude agent, we've only found one mistake in the past 30 title searches. And it was just a small thing on a marriage license, so not a big deal. And that's been huge for us because, we're negotiating with a seller on price and they're thinking that they don't have this $20,000 judgment in district court, but we know that they do. And so when they're talking about their numbers and we're going to give them 90, but they owe 80 and have a $20,000 judgment, we're not wasting time on those leads where there's not enough equity there, or we know what their numbers are better than them. And so it helps us from a negotiating standpoint.
Awesome. Love that. So Kansas is a non-disclosure state. So we have issues with like tapping into things like that. I'm guessing that it goes into the county website and does a search. Is that how the search, like the agent goes in and does that, is through the county website?
I'm hoping this doesn't bite me, but Montana is also a non-disclosure state. Claude is able to communicate directly with the server. And so for the county clerk and recorder, we have an online membership that we can get access to everything. But for district court, which is where all the judgments are, we don't have access to that. We have to go down to the courthouse for it. And you can look up, it'll show the case numbers online, but it won't give you the information in the cases. Well, for some reason, because Claude communicates directly with the server, it's able to read the documents in the metadata and give us access to documents that we otherwise wouldn't have unless we went down to the county courthouse.
Want to get motivated sellers that nobody knows about? Introducing 10X TV. If you want to create credibility in your market, find deals that nobody else knows about, and crush your competition, you need to check into TV commercials. It is the new buzz in the real estate investing industry since we introduced it several years ago. I've been using TV commercials myself for the last 12 years and it's absolutely crushed it. So if you want to learn how to get on TV and to do something that little to no people are doing right now, go to claimmymarket.com. Again, that's claimmymarket.com. We usually only work with 2 investors per market, so if you're interested, reach out to us and book a call to see if you can claim your market before anybody else does. Now back to the show. There's those deals that, you wait for the title work and a couple weeks later something pops up and all of a sudden they don't know that they owe something. So either they owe more than what you can buy it for, yep, or they don't want to sell because they're like, shoot, if I would have known about this judgment, I wouldn't have sold. So then you don't have, you don't have to waste your time doing inspections and then spending money on that and that type of thing. So it seems like that could save a lot of time.
Yep. It's been great so far.
Cool. I love it. Awesome. What other tools are you guys using in your business that has changed the game for you? For some people, it's a CRM. For some people, it's, a skip tracing service or data service. What are you guys using day to day, software wise or tool wise, that's really helping you guys right now?
Go ahead. I'm on the PropStream for information about the properties, and you can go in there and basically it'll give you a number of, you define your area and tell them you're looking for certain properties with certain features, and it'll give you a list of them. It'll also see. I want to when I'm negotiating with you, Tony. I want to know about you and how we're going to communicate. But I also want to know about your product. And so if I can go into PropStream and I can find out, well, like what Wyatt is talking about, what the liens are, what the items that are owed. In North Carolina, where I am, we can't have an AI. Well, if you are really highly technically good, you can have something that acts like a human being and answers questions once you get inside the websites. But I'm not that sophisticated to be able to do the stuff that Wyatt's doing. So that's very impressive. But what I want to know, negotiating power basically is whoever has the most alternatives. And so before I sit down with these people, I want to know what their other choices are. If they're in a world of hurt, they've got this foreclosure coming up. There's a whole bunch of other problems associated with the property. They've got some notices from the county saying they've got some things that have to be fixed. Their other choices are pathetic. And so I've got a considerably better position. I don't have to buy their house. I can buy other houses. So my choices are particularly strong. My negotiating posture is strong. In their situation, I need to know what they're dealing with. If instead the place is free and clear, well, it wouldn't be free and clear. I wouldn't be talking to them. Instead, if there's limited numbers of problems and there's something they can cure easily, then I need to know that when I start out and before I sit down with them. So that's been a very nice tool.
Does it show the mortgage amount on PropStream?
It'll give you some good information. It won't be able to get you down to exactly what they owe right now, but you can do some quick calculations and get pretty close.
Yeah, I recently just started using Property Machine. My team did about 30 days ago. We're still, we're still trying to figure out exactly how accurate it is, but that is the only thing that we have found that will actually show us the mortgage information. So if someone says, I don't know what I owe, or I don't want to tell you, or something like that, then we have that information that somehow it pulls from different sources. And I think it actually even pulls from the MLS. So when it pulls up comps, it's actually pulling comps from the MLS as opposed to just comps from like Zillow or Realtor.com or something like that. So
Right. And what Wyatt said earlier about he found only one thing that was incorrect. This is something that you really need to warn the people that are listening. AI hallucinates. It will come up with stuff that's just flat out wrong.
yeah.
And so one of the things you need to have is some kind of sense of, no, that's just incorrect. There's no way that that's right. And then double check it. One of the things that I like to do is I get an answer out of Claude, I copy it, I take it over and I put it in Perplexity is really good at doing detailed researches. The thing I like about Perplexity.ai, the thing I like about it is it shows its source material. And in California, I'm an attorney. I actually do quick little legal research issues here. If I want to know how many days for filing a mechanics lien, if I want to do all those sorts of things, real simple just to go into AI. But then take it out of there. As an example, if you're trying to take a note and cut it into little pieces and sell different pieces, sometimes you get into violations of securities laws. So to check that out, to make sure you don't get into huge amounts of trouble, I did a bunch of research. So when I took all that stuff out of there, stuck it into Perplexity, Perplexity then gives me conclusions, but it gives me the cases. So then instead of me just believing the AI, I read it would take me a couple of days to find all the cases. Instead, they give me the three key ones. I read the three cases. Instead of me relying on them, I rely going directly to the data and know what I'm doing. But there's a big caveat you need to give everybody who's thinking that, oh yeah, AI is wonderful. It is. It's amazing. But just like you and me, we make mistakes, and so does AI.
I just love how you're using all the different tools, and I just love that your generation is plugging into this. I didn't expect you to come on here and talk so much about AI and how you're using all the different types of AI, because they are all different, right? I was actually talking to a guy yesterday that has an AI business. We went to lunch, and he showed me his phone that he programmed, and he programmed it in Telegram. He had all these different chats, and he had them all connected to different AI platforms. So if he wanted financial and CFO information, he loaded it into a certain AI that was good for that. And then he had his other chats that were connected to, Chat GPT and Claude and the things that it specialized in.
Yeah.
So being able to know which AI tools are better for what is definitely going to help you. And I just love how you're doing that.
Well, what was I was a speaker at Remax's national convention. I'm with Remax, and what was delightful is I'm walking out in front of this audience, and I had the people raise their hands. I've been a real estate broker since 1979, and I had the audience raise their hands on how many people weren't born in 1979.
Here I was born.
Yeah, and so here they have this old guy talking about all kinds of wild AI stuff in front of an audience of 20 to 30-year-olds. It was fun. I've had a great time with that.
That's amazing. I love it. What about you, Wyatt? Is there any kind of tool or system that you're using that you think is really awesome for your business?
You know, when you first started asking that question, I immediately wanted to talk about TV, which obviously probably isn't the answer that you were looking for with that. But man, that was the thing. You know, marketing's the start of your business, and if you can get that right, it makes everything else easier. And so that was the thing that actually gave me the potential to grow a bigger business. And that's what allowed these other tools to start mattering to me. And so those tools I'm going to talk about, they're nothing revolutionary, but there's stuff that I actually got wrong in the beginning. And now that I'm cleaning it up, I'm really starting to see the power of it. And the first thing there is getting on Google Workspace. So having Gmail and chat and Drive and all that stuff connected and, you know, the same company wide, it, it eliminates a whole lot of redundancy. And the next thing was getting a company playbook, like a handbook sort of thing, and getting that hosted online. And we ended up using Notion. I know there's others that can be used for the same thing, but we ended up with Notion. And all that stuff sounds pretty boring. And in the beginning, I didn't want to have to worry about that stuff. I just wanted to chase deals. And what happened as, you know, I layered on more marketing and the business grew, those little inefficiencies really started to eat away at what we were doing to the point where I had to go back and I had to fix those things and make them more efficient. And so that's what I would say to that question is just getting all your communication, information, everything on platforms that are going to work together. And now the even bigger payoff of all of that is that that information allows AI to do a lot more in your business. So if I was still doing stuff in a chaotic way and having it offline, I wouldn't be able to apply these AI agents to it like I'm going to be able to in the coming months. And so that's really going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I second that with Google Workspace. In fact, that was so simple and like what I thought was obvious, but I think maybe not a lot of people use Google Workspace for their email, for their Google Drive, and to be able to share all that information back and forth. In fact, I'm raising money for a fiber optic deal, and my CFO and she kept sending me Excel spreadsheets, and I'm like, can we put this in a Google sheet? So that way, when you modify it in real time. When I modify it in real time. We don't have these spreadsheets we're passing back and forth. And it forced her to get onto Google Workspace. And I don't know if she's still going to continue using it. But that is a good one. Going back to AI, Claude, I actually am going to hire someone, either the guy I had lunch with yesterday, or I've got a couple other people that I'm talking to come in and teach my people how to use Claude. So the
Oh,
first step that I did was I emailed my team and I said, do these steps. And it was download Claude, connect your Gmail, connect your Google Calendar, connect your Google Drive. I got a team account so that way we can collaborate. And then Tuesday of next week, I'm just going to show them the basics of what I know. Just a couple things that save me a lot of time is, when someone sends me something, says, can you do something at this time? I'll just go into Claude and I'll say, put this on my calendar at this time. And if there's any conflicts, let me know. And he'll come back and he'll say, it's on your calendar. And then I can email the other person back or text him back and say, yep, we're good to go. And I can even say, invite Bailey, invite Grace, and then prompt it or put it somewhere that if I say invite Grace, invite Bailey, invite whoever, that this is the email that you use. In fact, I have something that's going on at my son's school that's like 3 different days. And I just pulled up Claude and I said, Claude, can you put on my calendar these 3 days at 8 a.m. that I need to be at my son's school? And then boom, it puts it in there. And it saves me what, 3 to 5 minutes or whatever it is. But if you're doing that continuously all day, I mean, that's, at least an hour a day of just those little things like that. And over the course of time is just a lot of time. And then last thing I'll say about that is if you can implement that with your team and have your team do that, It may not necessarily replace team members, but it'll allow them to not have to work as hard and to just get more output with your team members that you have. So I think if you can find an AI engine like a Claude, which I think is the best one, as of now, to implement with your team, it can really help them to be more efficient, more effective. So.
Yeah, and on that note, not everyone's on the leading edge like Tim is. And I know when I was trying to implement just these smaller things early on, the team really fought me on it. They're like, "Oh, this way has always worked. Why are we going through all this work to change it?" And then after we got it implemented and it worked great and saved us a bunch of time, everyone loves it. And so definitely, people that are just getting into implementing AI and stuff like that, don't be surprised when the team fights you on it and don't be afraid to push through it.
Yep, 100%.
And you've got a great idea there because really you don't have to be on the leading edge. I make presentations at real estate offices. It just takes me 2 hours just to get people up to speed and, teach them how to prompt, teach them how to, for us, it's really good to know how to do virtual staging. So when you present a house, instead of it being vacant, or now, frankly, on your flips, you might do this. Gemini is really good for that. But you just take your regular picture and then tell Gemini to put furniture in it and to stage the thing. And, it'll do it. And so, but all those sorts of things in about 2 hours, I can get somebody up to speed to where they can use the most important things. Because realistically, you shouldn't spend all your time trying to be on the leading edge of this. You need to be out getting deals and putting stuff together. So good for you, Wyatt. You've got it just at the right way of doing it.
What's interesting is not too long ago, I had one of my assistants research virtual staging companies, and I didn't even realize. I think I knew it. I just didn't even think about it. You could actually just do that with AI now. So that saves not only money, but time. Because I mean, it's 100 some bucks to virtually stage, and then takes them 2 to 3 days to do it. And AI now can do it in probably less than 30 minutes. So.
Gemini.google.com. And I have a virtual assistant. I take the pictures, send it to the assistant. It comes back in a few hours. It's all done. And it's very straightforward. There are a number of places that you can. Matter of fact, I probably shouldn't tell everybody about this because I'm thinking, I'm kind of stupid telling everybody how to do it themselves. I had to put up a little app and say, "Here, send me some money. I'll do it for you." So
Cool. What else do you guys want to talk about? I got a list of questions here. Is there any other topics that you guys want to throw out for topic of conversation, either just a general topic or something you guys are working on that you want to talk through?
I know for me, talking about how to get more money out of a lead is something I'm interested in. So I don't necessarily want to grow our marketing budget. I'd really like to, monetize more leads so that we can be making better profit off of the same marketing, just to kind of shore things up. And so whether that's keeping stuff as rentals, which I'm mostly against, or trying to do novations, which I've tried before, and different things like that. Or like trying to list stuff and be a hybrid like Tim is, interested in talking more about that kind of stuff or what you're seeing out there that other people are doing.
So basically, right now you're wholesaling properties and you feel like you're leaving money on the table by not having money to close on them and wholesale them or fix them up or keep them as rentals kind of thing.
We're hardly doing any wholesale. We close on everything and then either wholesale it or flip it. Plenty of money to be able to purchase them and do those strategies, if I can get a low enough offer accepted. And so if there was something I could do to get those offers up and get more properties or more leads converted, that would be what it would be.
So it's converting more leads. Are you talking about more from like a sales perspective, more from a marketing perspective on dialing in your marketing more? Can you kind of get a little more specific on that?
Yeah, so it's more from a business model perspective. And like one example would be we had a lead that came in the other day that I think was worth about 360 on the market. Our offer to him was 300. We were going to buy it and wholesale it, right? But he wanted 315, and I couldn't come up that much. It just made it too tight. And it was pretty much a brand new house built a couple of years ago. And so if I was going to do a novation on that one, I could have cleared maybe 20 grand on it or something. Or if I figured out, maybe if we started doing hybrid stuff and listed it instead, that'd be an easy commission. And so just examples like that, where maybe there's other things we can do with these leads to make some more money. But all of that caveated by, I know that focus is the best thing in this business to be able to grow and stuff. And so if it's the case that, I just got to keep wholetailing and flipping, I'll keep doing it. Just looking for different perspectives on that if there are.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, monetizing leads, right? I mean, we're already paying for the leads, so how can we monetize them? So, do you have a realtor that you can send deals to, and you can figure out how to get some kind of referral fees or marketing fees from them?
Yeah, I had gotten referral fees in the past. I had to switch away from her. And so kind of getting a new guy put in that position and I've gotten a couple referral fees from that. But it's never been something that adds up to more than 20 or $30,000.
Yeah, which is still, I mean, 20 to 30,000. I mean, that's still money, right?
Yeah, that's half
Um,
my TV budget.
Yeah, exactly. So, one thing that Rick House shared on one of our calls that we did just like this is he reached out to an auctioneer company and he refers his deals to auction companies. Well, what auction companies do, and they started this not too long ago, well, I say not too long ago, within the last 10, 15 years, is they actually charge the buyer a 10% premium. So instead of charging the seller, they charge the buyer. And so they have 10% that they get, and they use the 10% as a real estate commission for their marketing, for their, all their efforts, right? And if they procure the lead, then they keep the full 10% and then pay their overhead. Well, that gives enough room that if someone refers business to this to an in auction company, that you can get a bigger cut than just the 25% of the 3% or 30% of the 3%.
Yeah.
So he
Okay.
actually negotiated where he gets 5% of that deal. I don't know if very many auction companies will do that, but even if they do 3% and you can send them a $200,000 deal, that's $6,000 back in your pocket. You know what I
That's
mean?
huge. Okay.
And if you're not licensed, you have to figure out how to legally get that money back to you. They can maybe call it a marketing fee or whatever. There's kind of ways to potentially get around that. But he pays for his marketing budget above and beyond just from those referrals.
Thanks. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I just emailed my team the other day to kind of look into that and see if the only thing is the auction company that we have in our city. Not a huge fan of. They just kind of do some things that I think are a little deceptive. So we need to dig and find an auction company that is willing to do that because I mean they've got 10% to work with, and even if they can give us 1 to 2% somehow, we can make that work. So.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll dig into that locally here.
Yeah. And then just monetizing the leads, I mean, just sales, sales process. Are you the one taking the lead still right now, or do you have someone that's taking the leads for you?
I just hired a guy a few months ago and I've been training him and he's pretty much taken it over. So it's not me anymore.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the biggest thing on that is, I kind of took my eye off the ball last year and wasn't really diving into our sales numbers. And fourth quarter was really slow, and I didn't realize that, we kind of shifted some people around, and one of our guys just wasn't doing a great job of converting leads. I just thought it was getting slow. It was that kind of time of year. And then as we started diving into it, now we look at our numbers all the time, like what
Yeah.
leads are coming in, what are we converting, what are we getting on appointments, and we just hired a new lead manager. And I got this from Josh and Tiffany's. They actually do role playing or call listening pretty much every single day.
Oh,
So our
wow.
new lead manager, she's been with us, I don't know, 30 days now, and one person on my team is meeting with her every single day to go over a call from the previous day. We're refining scripts all the time. We're going over objections, and then I'll just pop in and listen every once in a while and kind of give my spin on what I think changes should be made and what could have been done better. So really just dialing in your numbers and looking at those maybe not even every day, but at least once a week to see what's converting. And if something's not converting, you need to figure out why pretty quickly because you can get off track pretty quickly. And it's kind of like a boiling frog. If you're not really looking at it, like eventually you just keep boiling and boiling, and all of a sudden it can be not too late, but it's at a point where it's just harder to recover.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's something that's a little new to me now that I've got someone else doing it. And I appreciate the advice on that because that's definitely something I got to keep up on.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. What about you, Tim? You got anything you want to throw out here?
Yeah, as opposed to monetizing the leads, what I've been doing recently is monetizing negotiating ability. And I have a system called negotiatingconsultant.com where people from all over the United States, mainly investors, will call me up and say, I've got this complex negotiation, I got this problem I can't solve. well, I've been doing this for a right long time. I can typically solve that. So I charge them an hourly fee. We get their thing taken care of, and it works. The other thing that Wyatt might consider in terms of he doesn't like to have the rentals on a long-term period, keep them for a little while. Hopefully they'll appreciate some, and then sell them with seller financing. Because you will find a tremendous amount of people, such as you would be the quintessential version. You know, back when you were an electrician working for somebody else, lenders would make your loan all day long. As soon as you went out on your own, nope,
Yeah.
3 to 5 years, they won't touch you.
Yep.
Well, you people like you are some of the hardest working folks in the United States. That you are the people that really deserve the loans, and yet they won't make them to you. And so if you take the guy who worked for the cabinet company for 15 years, when the guy who owns the company wants to retire, he sells it to him. After he sells it to him, that guy can't get a loan. Well, he's the guy I want to sell. If I've got a distressed house, instead of me flipping it and me fixing it up, I'll make it habitable, sell it to them, carry back the paper. He'll go in there and rip out the kitchen, make it gorgeous, greatly increase the value, make my paper much more valuable, and and just move on down the road like that. But it's things of that nature that is what's helped me on the negotiating consultant side, where I can tell people that, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not happy doing this. Okay, well, how about if you try this? And and it particularly works out. The other thing, Tony, that you mentioned was role playing, and I shouldn't. Well, I'll mention it because I've heard about it. I don't have all the details. I've talked with this one company that has chatbots that will take and role play with their salespeople, and they will program the chatbots with all the objections and all the different things that are there. And so if somebody's not performing as well as possible, instead of learning over the phone, failing and failing and failing, give them a little education using the chatbot, and it doesn't tie up other people. You can just sit there and do that. And I don't have the details on that for you, Tony.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Steve Trang's chatbot. He's got a phone number you can call and role play with it. And then I don't know if you have to pay for it, but I think it'll like grade you or grade the person, and it'll send it to to the owner of the company and things of that nature. So yeah, he's got a lot of cool AI stuff that he's working with, especially that role playing bot. So yeah, a couple things I want to touch on there. So good point, Tim, about negotiating. We I can't remember when we really started talking about this. I think it was Tony Robbins' Business Mastery in like 2010. He said, with all the transaction that you're doing, because some people are doing, thousands of transactions a year, and then real estate investors, dozens or maybe, hundreds potentially. He said, how can you, and I don't know if he phrased it this way, but basically, how can you squeeze all of the juice out of the orange? And there's a couple ways that we've done that. One is, like Tim said, negotiating. If you can negotiate even $1,000 more on each deal, in the beginning of each transaction, you do 40 transactions a year, that's 40,000 over here. If when you're renovating the property, you can figure out how to squeeze, money out of that, out of that budget and, budget smarter, save money on materials or whatever it is, there's another maybe $1,000, per property. Then when you're negotiating on the back end, some people give in too much. I mean, if I could go back to when I first started and I knew what I knew about negotiating now, I was probably leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on every single transaction negotiating when I was selling. Because when someone comes to you and they want to buy a house, like, COVID, you could give your highest price and people would accept it. Now it's kind of at the point where people are getting a little more picky and they may walk away, if you're $1,000 away, right? But what it comes down to is when someone makes an offer on a house, they usually really want that house. They walked into it, they felt it, they had visualized themselves there. And so, if you're a couple thousand apart, you got to find that time when they're just not going to budge and you may have to give in. But we used to when someone would give us a lowball offer, we would actually come down quite a bit. Now we stick closer to our price, and we're really good about negotiating as high as we possibly can and squeezing that little bit extra at the end. So if you can get an extra thousand on the end, so that's $3,000 right there on each transaction. That if you can squeeze a little bit more, that there's another six figures in business right there. Gosh, there was something else that I was going to add on to there.
And let me add, that's an excellent idea. And see, you're interested in getting 1,000. the person who's negotiating with you is interested in having a feeling that they won. And so if instead of just negotiating on the money, if you can think of something, if instead of having a fixed size of a pie and you're cutting up the pie and my gain is your pain, instead try to expand it. So think of something else that that person wants and give them that something else that doesn't cost you very much and you take the $1,000. What you're looking for is asymmetry, something that costs you very little but they value high. And so if there is something of, oh, well, if we closed a little bit later than that, it'll save you some money on your moving expenses and things of that nature. How about if we change the closing date, but I get the money? And, as long as you're not giving them something that costs you a fortune in terms of holding costs, then you're coming out ahead. But, Tony Robbins has an excellent idea. Figure out different ways that you can be successful. And one of your biggest things in negotiations is people want to try to write the other person's victory speech. They need to be able to tell somebody that, oh yeah, I won, I did great. Well, think of some way where you can give them that feeling of you won, but you still get the money.
Yeah, 100%. And I used $1,000, by the way, as just a small, tangible, like easy thing to squeeze out. But really, it's probably you could squeeze 2 to 5,000 potentially out any one of those, right? So it could be, and that's what sucks about when someone looks at the return on investment for a marketing channel. There's so many different factors. It's how did you negotiate on the front end? How did you monetize that lead? How did you negotiate on the back end? Was there something that you messed up and didn't, walk through a house and forgot to estimate, $5,000 to $10,000 on the foundation or didn't do an inspection? You know what I mean? So there's so much variance between like, potentially a deal being worth $20,000 and maybe it being worth $40,000, right? And the other thing that slipped my mind that I wanted to touch on also was you are doing something that a lot of people aren't able to do, Wyatt, and that's actually close on the property. I would say like 90% of investors either don't have access to money or don't want to have the access to money to close on properties. They just want to wholesale, which is fine. That can make a good living. But if you're already closing on the property, that gives you so many different options. So we just got done renovating, I think, 5 houses this last week, or in the next 7 days, basically, there's 5 houses that we renovated that are getting ready to go on the market. And I met with my team yesterday. We went over the numbers, and I'm keeping 4 of those as rentals and only selling one of those. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I'm able to raise the money, and then I'm able to find the banks on the back end to refinance those properties. But I actually built a spreadsheet that showed if I were to sell the property, how much would I make on the profit? So, for instance, there was one deal that we could have sold it and made 22,000 profit. And analyzing in my spreadsheet, it takes the tax benefit in consideration when you cost segregate the property and do bonus depreciation. That I was actually able to get $16,000 worth of tax benefits from that property. So 22,000, and let's say, you take 40% off the top, you're left with, let's say 15,000. I'm actually making more money by keeping that property. Now, granted, that's tax savings that I'm saving down the road. It's not cash in my pocket right now. But then I also have $30,000, $40,000 worth of equity that, like Tim said, hopefully will appreciate over time. So I started doing this during COVID when prices started to spike up. And there were deals that I could have sold and made $20,000 on those deals. Well, recently, last year, I finally started kind of selling some of those that I was keeping during COVID, and they appreciated like $50,000. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Like some of them even $70,000.
Yeah.
So I would cherry pick some of those properties, Wyatt, and see how many of those you can put in your portfolio. And even if they don't appreciate a lot, the tax savings you get, and then when you sell it, if you keep it over a year, you should be able to do a 1031 exchange and
Yeah.
then not have to pay taxes on that money until you actually receive that money.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's something I've definitely flirted with. And, I've always been like too busy focused on the business to get into it too much. But like I said earlier, with building things out, I might have more time to do that before too long.
Yeah, and one thing someone told me a long time ago that I wish I would have listened to them sooner is they were like, build relationships with local banks. And I was like, I don't really need to. And luckily, I listened to her at one point because she kept harping on me as a real estate agent that I kind of did some business with. And it's so nice to be able to have a local bank or banks, I should say, to send properties to, and you don't have to, you send them your financial information once, you update it once a year. They give you a guidance line that says they will lend you this much money if you find properties, and here are the terms on those properties. And then you send them the deal, and they've literally just tell you when the appraisal's done, when the title work's done, and you go sign the documents. A lot of people go through DSCR lenders, which there's advantages of that too. Rates can be maybe a little bit better, longer term, they're 30 years instead of 20 years. But you have to give them information on every single property, and then you have to update your information all the time. And
Yeah.
it's such a drag. It's
Cost
so
money.
nice being able to just send information to a bank and say, here's the address, and you only hear from them a couple times until closing.
Yep. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. What else do you guys want to throw out for discussion here?
Well, I like the way, Tony, that you're keeping the properties, because if you get a portfolio of properties that you can just hang on to and eventually develop a nice cash flow, passive income. Now, the suckers keep taking money. Real estate always has that heat pump that blows out of the roof that needs to be repaired or whatever. But some of the best ways to make money in real estate is just to buy it and hold it and keep it a long, long, long time. And once you've kept it a long time, you're going to have every incentive in the world to keep it even longer, because when you sell it, they have that wonderful depreciation recapture that just takes all the money back. So, but I had some friends back in Palos Verdes when I lived there outside of Los Angeles. His dad, he said, my dad told me the way you make money in real estate is you buy real estate. Yeah, but you're a realtor. Yeah, no, I buy it and I keep it for myself. I sell everybody else's real estate. So
Yeah.
good for you, Tony.
Yeah, I had so first of all, that's the way to build wealth, right? I mean, you can build wealth over time, flipping houses and making money if you take that money and reinvest it somehow. But the easiest way to build wealth is just keeping properties. 2019 was my 18th, 19 year of business, and we just had all kinds of things happen. We had a huge commercial property that went $500,000 over budget. We had 3 really slow months in our business, and we had a lot of overhead. We had, well over 6 figures in overhead. Um, I had a personal house that was going way over time, over budget. Like there were just so many things that kind of imploded at the same time. And the thing that kept me through it was actually owning property. I ended up selling 30 of my properties to be able to pay all of the overages and all the things that were happening at the time.
Right.
Whereas if I didn't have those properties and that happened, then I would have been in a much tougher position. So not only does it help you build wealth, it helps you build a cushion so that if something like that does happen down the road, that you have something to back you up.
And the best way to teach people things, I think, is to tell stories. And so one of the best illustrations of exactly what you said, William Randolph Hearst, once upon a time, one of the richest human beings in the world, all of a sudden had situations similar to yours. Boom, everything went down. Who bailed him out? His girlfriend, Marion Davies. Why? She owned a bunch of apartments in Santa Monica. And so because she had just accumulated this wealth, she had this nice steady base of assets as opposed to, his newspapers and all the other things. So if a guy that rich, needed to be bailed out by his real estate holdings, it's a good illustration of just how that works. But yeah, good for you, Tony.
What was the guy's name?
William Randolph Hearst, Hearst Castle?
No.
No, really, up in San Simeon. Go up the coast. It's absolutely gorgeous. You'll love it. He was one of the biggest newspaper guys in the world.
Okay.
And the movie that ends with the phrase Rosebud, Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane was based upon him. A horrendously powerful guy because he controlled a tremendous number of newspapers. So politically very prominent. Used to sit there and be very involved in all the political things. Well, go up the coast of San Simeon. It's a beautiful day. And
Is that near LA?
You're up. You're south of. You're south of Big Sur. You are north of Santa Maria. So up in there. But and take the tour that takes you all in the background of all of the stuff of how they actually built all these things. But it's just this gorgeous castle. It's absolutely spectacular.
Very nice. Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Awesome. Well, let's start wrapping up here. So one of the questions that I get, I've been in the business for a little while, not near as long as Tim. So I'd love to hear what Tim says here. But I get asked the question a lot. If I could go back to when I started real estate, if I could tell myself or give myself a piece of advice that something I know now that I could give to my past self when I first started the business, what would that be? Tim, I'll let you start that off. What would you tell yourself getting into the game, if you could go back and or talk to yourself when you first started in the real estate game?
Pay a bit more attention to my own situation, my family situation, and not be so completely focused on taking exceptionally good care of all the clients as a realtor. In other words, making a whole lot of money for them. I should have many, many years ago started building my portfolio. And just, a good friend of mine out of Oregon, basically had been in the business for a lot of years. Every single year he'd buy one house and then another, and then another, and then another. Well, now he has a large portfolio of items. Me, I was very busy on being a really good realtor, getting all kinds of huge numbers, running big teams, all that fun stuff. Should have started a long time ago, getting my own portfolio of assets and notes and things of that nature. So if you got a whole bunch of younger people in there, buy stuff. Let the tenants pay your mortgage off. By the time they do that and the property is dramatically appreciated, oh, and again, a nice story. I'm up there at Green Valley Ranch in Las Vegas, and there's this older gentleman there bouncing up in the pool. And I asked him, what's he do? He says, not much. Oh, well, what did you used to? Well, I used to be an aerospace engineer, but now I own this apartment building. Oh, how many units? 100. Uh-huh. So me and four other guys bought this back ages ago. And then one guy wanted to be bought out, so me and the other three guys bought him out. And eventually I bought everybody else out. Oh, okay, so you got 100 units, and how much does each one of those rent for each month? Well, it's average 800. Oh, so I'm sitting there thinking, he doesn't really have to do too much, does he? The money just comes in, but he took that one asset, kept it. Everybody else bailed, and here he is sitting there bouncing in the pool at Green Valley Ranch, and just enjoying life. The world is his oyster.
Yeah, hopefully, Wyatt, you take that and run with it because man, you're young enough. You start stacking up on properties, you're gonna love it 20 to 30 years from now when they're, really paid down or really paid off and appreciated quite a bit.
Yeah, that's the plan. And I
Yeah.
think, if I was going to go back and give myself some advice, it would be a scientist and not a judge. So, before being successful in business, I had pretty low self-esteem and like nothing debilitating, but just what a lot of people fight with, like lack of self-worth. And I was always looking for, money and success to prove that I was worth something. And so that's what kept me chasing it in the beginning. And when I talk about being a scientist, not a judge, when I quit my job as an electrician, I did one property my first year. And I spent most of that year feeling terrible because things weren't working. And I had judged myself and the situation that it wasn't going to work. When looking back, I realized that, I was a scientist out there doing research, trying all these different things. I, knocked 400 or 500 doors. I sent out thousands of letters, did a bunch of cold calls. And I worked through and filtered through what worked, it didn't. And that's what allowed me to buy 15 properties my second year. And as things started to take off, I felt better about myself and it became easier. But so many of my decisions early on could have been made better if I had been a little bit less harder on myself and just been like, okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens and then keep working and improving forward.
I like that. There's a saying that Thomas Edison, he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. He said, I found, what did he say? I found 10,000 ways. Do you
It
guys know what I'm
wouldn't
talking
work.
about? 10,000
Yeah,
ways not to do it
10,000
or
10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
yeah, exactly. And
He
and
finally
he
found the one.
he had how many patents? He had thousands and thousands of patents, but he only had like two or three big inventions. One was the light bulb, obviously. So I like that because you're not always going to succeed. You're not always going to win. But if you can take your losses and you can learn from them, you can really amplify yourself. In fact, sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do your successes, right?
usually.
So I'll give you guys a few things. First of all, I would tell myself that everything's going to work out. Like in 2019, that was probably the hardest year of my life. And so many things were kind of imploding, if you will. And I forgot to tell you, my wife was 6 months pregnant And because our house was not ready, it went a year over timeline. The landlord kicked us out of the house, and we had to find a place to move while my wife was 6 months pregnant, while we were dealing with contractors that we had to fire many times on not only the personal residence, but the other big project. Like at that time, I just thought life was over. It was like, man, everything literally that could go wrong is going wrong. But somehow it all works out. Like you always bounce back as long as you show up and put the effort in. It's all going to work out. And one thing I know I'm 26 years in now, but like back when I started, I just worked so hard, and now I just know how to work smart. I feel like I only really work a few hours a day. Um, and it's because I'm able to work on the things that are like the most important. And I've been really trying to work on my health and myself. And my coach said it the best. She said, the more that you're going to work on yourself and the more you're going to improve yourself, the more you're going to improve your business. If you improve your business, that doesn't mean that yourself is going to improve, something of that nature. So really, I think, and Tim kind of alluded to it, I think, is like working on yourself and your family and like getting that straight. If you can get that straight, it's all going to work over into your business because you have all of this, your health, your mindset and all those things. Those are all going to transfer into your business, and your business is going to take off. So you work on one, really, you're working on both. So,
Like that.
all right, cool. Well, thanks guys for coming on, Tim. It was a pleasure to meet you. I love how you're utilizing all that AI stuff and really diving into it. I'll put a little plug in for you. You said you had a book, a course, or something like that on AI. Can you give people the link to it?
Yeah, AInegotiator.ai. So AInegotiator.ai, and that's where you can buy the book. If you want that super prompt for free, send an email with a super prompt in the subject to real estate negotiating at gmail.com. We already know, you all know about real estate negotiating. So send it to real estate negotiating. You all know Gmail. So send it to there. We'll send you back the super prompt. And if you need any help on your negotiations, just go to negotiatingconsultant.com. You'll get connected with me. I don't delegate this stuff to anybody else. It took me 46 years to get this art going. And so there's a whole lot of negotiating that's just feel, that is art, that is sensing what the right thing to do is. So if I can help any of y'all, just give me a holler.
Cool. Awesome. And Wyatt, it's good to see you, man. I know it's been a while since we talked, but it's good to see that you've kind of grown the business the way you have. And I knew when I talked to you and you were wanting to get on TV. That's how Wyatt and I met. He wanted to get on TV, and we got him on TV, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. I knew for two reasons that you were going to crush it in that market. Number one, it's a small market, so I knew we could just get a ton of commercials in your market. And two, I could see the hunger in you and that you were really getting after it. So it's really good to see you doing what you're doing. And if you need anything, always let us know.